I'm Mark Gilbert here. Thanks for clicking in. This video is entitled Rebuilding Your Life. And like all the videos on this channel, they're designed to give you some tools and ideas for assisting with our spiritual evolution. This video is part of a series we're doing looking at the Ernest Holmes book, The Basic Ideas of Science of Mind. We continue with a chapter entitled Rebuilding Your Life. However, I want to stress, as I've done in the other videos, that each of these videos stands alone. They give you some key ideas and concepts that you can use right now to create a better life. But taken in total, all of the videos in this series, and by going through all of them, as well as supplementing it by reading the small book by Holmes, will really truly give you an orientation to his philosophy. It really can change your life. The title of this chapter is called Rebuilding Your Life. I probably would have named it something different because it seems kind of vague to me. I probably would have said something like reframing your life or reorienting your life or perhaps creating new worldview. What Holmes is attempting to do in this chapter is to change how we look at life and what we see as important in our life. There are 5 key elements to this chapter. Just to cover them quickly, one is he wants us to see that we each contain or have inherited by the very nature that we are these spiritual beings on this physical plane, that we have certain spiritual divine qualities and powers within us and that we can use them. The second key point is that we are on an evolutionary journey and that through all of the ages of time and all of the processes on this physical planet, man stands at the pinnacle of a key aspect of evolution, where we now know that we know and that we can make choices through our thoughts. He then wants us to see that the next step, the positive evolution for us as we go to the next level of being these spiritual beings in this human experience, is that we need to change what's important to us and that we need to focus our energy and time on the key divine qualities and powers that are within us. He then outlines what those powers are and gives us a quick 3-step process for how we can shift and focus on each of these elements to have them be manifesting more fully in our life experience. Now you might be wondering, why did Holmes wait to the 4th chapter of the book to have us reframe how we look at life? In my personal opinion, I think the first 3 chapters were a hook to the people that are on the planet now, that each of us have developed and moved through certain stages of our evolution of our consciousness, such that we hold a worldview where we see certain things are important. And those things are typically material oriented. That by that I mean our physical bodies, or our finances and material prosperity. So in the earlier chapters, Holmes is really creating a hook to where we are. He's meeting us where we are in our individual needs. The beginning of the book related to the powers of our mind and how the mind can create or manifest our lives, the basic essence of the teaching. But then he wants us to see how we can use it to better ourselves in those things that may be more important to us. You know, I've studied the science of mind for almost 30 years now, and I've been teaching it for almost 20 years. And one of the things I've discovered is that when many people come to the philosophy, they're usually coming from a sense of something's not right, there's a lack, there's a hole, they're looking for some need to be met. And typically it's a health issue, or it's a financial issue, or it is a relationship issue. In some cases, it might even be a spiritual yearning, which if it's the spiritual yearning, this chapter I think is the one that's going to speak best to that individual need. But more people than not are often coming out of a material worldview into a more humanistic worldview. And for those of you familiar with spiral dynamics, it's typically someone moving from the end of the orange into the green and then green into the integral level. The green and integral are typically the audiences that resonate with science of mind philosophy. But it's meeting people where they are. And so Holmes has addressed that in the first 3 chapters. And in fact, he starts this chapter by saying, it's time to consider a larger concept and attain a higher spiritual understanding of what you've read so far. He then goes on to say, you've read about how the power of the mind works, how to use it for manifesting finances and health. Now it's time to go deeper with it. And then he gives us this sentence, which I'm going to read him and then I'm going to rephrase it for you. He says, one of the key points is, man, as a son of God, inherits the qualities and powers of the Father. Man, as a son of God, inherits the qualities and powers of the Father. You know, that's steeped in language that probably resonated with folks back in the 1950s when this book was written. If I was writing that sentence today, I'd probably say something along the lines of humans as an aspect of the divine or spirit inherit the qualities of the divine or spirit. We, as these spiritual beings, have the powers and the qualities that are in the creator of this entire universe. That's what he's getting at in that particular statement. And he wants us to claim that. The second point in this chapter is he lays out what he sees as the evolutionary path. I'm going to read you a longer quote, but it's one that is probably one of my favorites by Ernest Holmes because it outlines and describes this process of evolution in our consciousness. He writes, through the eons of time, life has been slowly climbing up the ladder of unfoldment to the present self-conscious state achieved in man. And again, when he says man, he means humanity. So plug in man and woman, everyone. Some degree of consciousness exists in everything because everything is some form of spirit, and spirit is intelligence. So he's getting at the point we've made previously. Everything is embedded with a layer of consciousness in it. However, there are degrees of intelligence or consciousness. We often hear the expression, consciousness sleeps in mineral life, dreams in plant life, awakens in animal life, and comes to self-consciousness in man. Man then stands at the very peak of the evolutionary climb. He's now a self-conscious individual, which means that he not only knows, but knows that he knows. He can think about his own consciousness, and he now has the power of choice, the very summit of life's upward striving. Evolution, through infinite ages, has done much for him. Now, the key point Holmes is making there in that lengthy quote is that we've had material evolution, but what's been unknown to us or below our level of recognition is that everything is embedded with this consciousness and that consciousness has been evolving. There's a state of consciousness that exists in the mineral world, in the plant world, in the animal world, and in the human world. In the integral theory, they like to talk about depths of consciousness. As we have built up the complexity of the human form, that we have a greater degree of conscious depth within us than, say, the material the physical rocks and minerals do. So if we can start seeing that everything has a layer of consciousness, if you can think about one-celled animals, they make a choice. They have choices every day. They choose whether to do one thing or another, and usually it's to maintain their structure, their integrity, and to do whatever it is to take care of their needs and meet those needs. There's sort of an instinctual consciousness driving the choices made by lower forms. But those choices and the complexity of the choices grow as the complexity of the physical forms grow. And here we are at this pinnacle where we not only have these wonderfully designed bodies who have consciousness within them that are continuously keeping things running within our physical form each day, but we now have a conscious awareness that knows that we know. And with that, the power to choose our thinking. That's where we become part of the co-creative process, and that we now become someone who can choose our thoughts and actions and direct where we're going in the future. And Holmes calls us in the next phase of this chapter to really look at what's next for us. Where do we want to go? What is the upward levels that we're striving to as humanity? You know, when we're rebuilding our life or reframing our life, as he's talking about in this individual chapter, he's trying to get us to shift to see that the purpose of life isn't to accumulate wealth, it isn't to accumulate relationships, it isn't to accumulate technology. Yes, relationships are going to grow, and yes, prosperity can flow to us, and yes, technology is on an evolutionary arc in and of itself. But when we look and step back and say, where is it that we see us going individually and collectively? He wants us to shift what we see as important. It's not about accumulating things, but it's about accumulating experiences and qualities. And he calls it by the future, our real true future and evolutionary direction, it's towards expressing more of the divine qualities and powers that he sees are within us. Which leads us to the question, what are those powers and qualities? So then Holmes answers that question. I'll read his words here. He says, "What then are those qualities that must be ours? The God qualities are an integral part of you." Get this now, because at the base essence of who you are and who I am and everybody that we encounter on this planet, each and every one of us is embedded with these qualities. They are life, love, wisdom, intelligence, peace, creativity, beauty, and joy. Now, we could debate those, but these are the 8 qualities that Holmes has put out, and he says that the divine essence, spirit, God, infinite intelligence, whatever you wish to call that thing which created all that is, embedded within us, these 8 qualities of life, love, wisdom, intelligence, peace, creativity, beauty, and joy. And that our future evolution is really oriented towards building more of those 8 qualities within our life. So how do we do that? We do it by a 3-step process that Holmes outlines in the chapter. I'm going to reframe his words a little bit here to simplify it, but he basically suggests to us the very first thing we need to do is to identify that these God qualities are within us. So we have to identify that life is within us, that love is within us, that creativity is within us, that joy is within us. We sit and form an awareness that this divine quality does exist within us. We sit with it, we meditate with it, whatever it takes in our own awareness to grow and recognize that these divine qualities exist, that you have it and that I have it. The second step is to then identify how is it showing up or not showing up in our life. Because where it's showing up, we want to manifest and keep building that. But where it's not showing up, where we've got a gap between where we think life could be further expressed in ourselves and what we're currently experiencing, when we see that gap, what we've identified is an area that we need to now move forward and claim what it is that we want to express more fully. In the expression of our life, for example, we might say that our physical forms are not as healthy as they need to be. We may say that we're out of shape, or that we're overweight, or that we have some health issues. If we want to more fully express life through these vessels that we're temporarily using during this lifetime, and this vessel is not healthy, and we see that gap, then we want to claim health so that we can claim more life. If we're looking for love, and we don't have relationships in our life, then we want to have more relationships. We start focusing on being love in our life so that we can manifest more love in our life. Again, the steps are: 1, claim that these God qualities are within you. 2, identify how they're manifesting and not manifesting so you'll know where to focus your attention. And the third step is to affirm, act, and know as if that's already in your life. So if we're working towards health, then we act like we are healthy, not to fool ourselves into a sense of false healthiness, but we act from a sense that I am healthy, and then begin thinking and acting with that health in mind. And we start making healthier choices. And through that, and through the power of our thinking and our intentions and conscious direction, we begin manifesting more health into our lives. The rest of this chapter is Holmes very briefly taking us through just some examples of each of the 8 qualities and where we might want to focus attention. How I would suggest that we do this is simply ask ourselves the question, and you can plug in each of the 8 qualities into these questions. How am I currently expressing the God quality of life? Where do I need to grow the God quality of life more? Then we could take those same questions and plug in, where am I expressing the God qualities of love, joy, creativity, and all 8 of them? And where can I express it more? The idea is that if we can fully express all of these 8 qualities within our lives by using this step of recognizing they're within us now, that our future evolutionary arc calls us to express them more fully, and we become acting as if they're already there, we begin manifesting them. And through that, we begin manifesting a world where you and I are expressing more fully the qualities of life. Imagine if everybody was living their life fully. Love, where we're all caring for one another. Wisdom, where we seek the knowledge that this life gives us and embody it in a way that we make wise choices for the greater good. That we use the power of the intelligence that's embedded within us for the highest possibilities. That we bring peace to ourselves and peace to the planet. That we recognize our unique creative expression of who we are and to build it more fully into our lives and give our creativity to this planet. That we enjoy the beauty that is around us and we begin expressing more beauty in our own lives. And that we recognize and know that we are joy and living a joyful life. Can you imagine what it would be like if we are all doing those things to the highest of our abilities? We would be caring for one another, and we would be taking our individual lives to their highest potential. We would be moving up Maslow's hierarchy to a sense of self-actualization and self-transcendence. And if every person was doing that, then we would truly be creating a world that works for all. So I'm calling you in this day to rebuild your life, to consider the divine God qualities that are within you, how you're expressing them, and where you can express them more fully. And at the back of that, to keep in your awareness this evolutionary path that we're on, that you're on it, that I'm on it, and that we are ever moving upward to a greater and greater expressions of the individual uniqueness that we are, and collectively all of humanity and this planet. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. There's a similar video right here next to my face if you want to click on it. Also, if you want to get notifications of future videos, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the bottom left-hand corner. If you'd like to contact me, email me at the address on the screen or drop me a comment in the comment field below on YouTube. Thanks.